Now we, Buddhist, how to say, refuge, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So we usually, we usually recite Buddham Shanam Gacchami, Dhammam Shanam Gacchami, Sangam Shanam Gacchami. Or Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya, Namo Sanghaya. Now Buddha or Dharma Sangha, they are the Jujub.
So when we speak about the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, as objects of refuge, they can be the causal object of refuge and resultant objects of refuge.
So the very purpose to pray to Buddha is oneself ultimately become Buddha. So from the Buddhist viewpoint, our final destination is Buddhahood. The seed of Buddha, the subtle mind, with the very nature, absence of independent existence. So is it that very nature act basis of change? And that also the very factor to possibility of elimination all wrong view. So now in order to achieve Buddhahood, firstly, we should achieve Sangha, Sangam Shanam Gacchami. Now, what is the real sort of, what's the qualification of Sangha, become Sangha? It's Dharma. That's all under the Lamding,
So, what qualifies someone as having attained the state of Sangha is the realization of the true Dharma within. And Dharma here is the truth of cessation, true cessation, and the path leading to the cessation. So the instant one has actualized the path within oneself, and then at that point one has become a Sangha.
Dayang, under the Kindusha in the Zane, Lovek in the Che. Buddha the Milvik in the Che. Dayang, Tibetan don't draw a Demon Sanjay Yajin. Tuba Chigi Kushinshir, Sajan take Tatu Chers. There is an debut Sarania, Sanjay Chur, Kindusungala.
So when we speak about the three jewels, and the Sangha here at the initial stage is the Sangha state is on the learner's stage, and then of course when you became fully enlightened, you become normal learners, you attain normal learner's stage. However, if we look at it from the point of view of resultant objects of refuge, the three jewels, then as Maitreya points out in his Sublime Continuum, Uttara Tantra, where in fact the Buddha himself can be seen as the embodiment of all the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha.
So from this level to Buddhahood, the way to the way of progress. That's the Gati Parangati Parasankati Buddhi Saha. That's the way. So sometimes I jokingly telling people, gati para sangha buddhisa, also meaning of this physical sort of kasota life. Young child, then lads away.
No.
Dharma.
A teenage youngster.
Then the tarye.
And then a prime of youth.
Then gawa.
Sorry, then a middle age and then old age.
So gati, paragati, parasamgati. Buddhisoha means death. In that case, our final destination is those cemeteries.
Cemeteries.
Cemeteries. Oh, that's our final destination. So we already, I think, at the stage of perhaps, my case, I think fourth already. Some of these young people, maybe third or second like that. So there's nothing valuable, nothing sacred. So therefore now, gati parasanga buddhisaha must be this mind, the ordinary, present our mind. Although the desire, happiness, always there. Desire to overcome suffering, always there. But the seed of suffering within us. All the creator of this problem within us. So we have to eliminate these things. This is possibility. Even with lifetime, I think if you seriously see because of the experiment, you gain some experience. So that gives us conviction. There is possibility. Gati parasanga buddhisa on mental level. It is possible. So, da londi kongnen kongdo dan royalia so de kasala wala shi da shila sumri things go yare.
So for this ordinary level of mind to move forward to a progressively higher state, as explained before, the most important elements that we need to cultivate are the practices of tranquil abiding, the union of tranquil abiding and special insight, Shamata and Vipassana. So now we will read from book 3, the volume 3.
네. 지수나가 투지 전부다. 대반은 기술로 그게 차로. 캐버도 퍼지 타만이를 라바니 세네. 다 퍼지 타만이 세네. 여보데 탈바주지. 라보숨 셰베난기 띵지 라바다 셔버 라바티 말이. 나 탐제 전부 고반 주지 바로도 신부 툭 세는 셔야 난게 삼대니 퍼진다. 실이 퍼지니 무슨 말이야. 양 어디지?
So the third section of Lamrim Chemo opens with a salutation that I pay respectful homage at the feet of the venerable those venerable masters who are embodiments of great compassion. And then it opens by stating that the manner in which, the way in which one trains in the last two perfections is as follows. So, so earlier we were talking about how the training in the practices of the three higher trainings constitute the heart of the path to liberation. So within that context, the practice of cultivating calm abiding, tranquil abiding, and special insight belongs to the higher training in meditation and higher training in wisdom. And in the context, if we relate this to the context of a practitioner aspiring for attainment of Buddhahood, then the kind of the structure of the path is presented within the framework of 6 perfections. And in that framework, the cultivation of tranquil abiding and special insight belong to the last 2 perfections, perfection of concentration and perfection of wisdom.
신에다 상도 공배 편유 되니 띵지 뒤지도 된다. 신에다 상도 뭐 니가 공급을 주세 그림 내에 소설을 주.
So this section Tsongkhapa divides in the following broad outlines, where he lists them as the following. 1, the benefits of cultivating serenity and insight, how tranquil abiding and insight includes all states of meditative concentrations, and 3, the nature of tranquil abiding and insight, and 4, why is it necessary to cultivate both, and 5, how to be certain about their sequence. So we will now read from the section that deals with the explanation of the method by which one trains in these 2 practices individually. So this is then divided into 3 sections. The method of training in the cultivation of tranquil abiding, the method of training in the cultivation of special insight, and how to unite the 2.
다 신의 사야지 가다 지르가라서 가서 그래 그 뒤에다 semya 유지를 그게 미버처라고 줄래 그게 미체 그 뒤가 내배 내처지 제집에 차르지 나도 또가 다른 신규의 유야 그게 소설 제약이 그 니버르지 뒤가 또가 어디다 싫어 땡인진 센스야 다 뒤야제다 시지에다가 다 뒤야제다
So when we talk about cultivating tranquil abiding and special insight, we need to understand actually what we were talking about is essentially cultivation of faculties that are naturally present within our mind. If we observe our states of mind within our cognitive experiences, we will see that there are, for example, within our mind, a certain quality of our mind which enable us to maintain our focus on a chosen object and allow us to retain that attention. And that aspect of our mind is the quality of concentration. And similarly, within our mind, naturally, we also possess the ability to differentiate and differentiate various characteristics of the chosen object. So that aspect of the quality of our mind is intelligence, the faculty of intelligence or wisdom. So when we are talking about practice of tranquil abiding and special insight, essentially what we are doing is to really develop those natural faculties that we have and perfect them.
So the sim under day sim with tingin the sim with the chat which you ever tako ya yarja tonas luzane ko zawal chene tako kunji te and zawal dene tako nibut church dachi so tako ko duje choji minuzane ko duzol rale tende indu tadi duzol ya kore khadu ge chanshi tene tingin dongya deda desam mayimbe 양거지 가서 그게 개진 다 세야다 단 개진다 가서 그게 타르는 동야 개진 타승야 튕진 주야 다 들려야 신이 초점 사지 다 튕배유는 내발서 다 뒤송이 그래.
So now in the case of the first practice, which is tranquil abiding, essentially, as explained before, what we are doing is to try to develop that natural faculty that we have, which enables us to retain our attention on a chosen object. So what we are trying to do is to apply effort, and by applying effort to develop that faculty of our quality of our mind and cultivating familiarity with that process, and in this way that quality of our mind becomes more and more developed and enhanced, because in this quality of our mind being part of the phenomena that belongs to conditioned domain, therefore it is a phenomena that is dependent upon, contingent upon its causes and conditions. So therefore, the more we cultivate the conditions that would give rise to it, the more effective and powerful that quality of the mind will become. So essentially, in the actual practice, what is required is to constant application of our faculty of mindfulness and faculty of awareness, or meta-awareness, samprajnana, shishin. And in addition to this, one also needs to remove the obstacles that come in the way of our cultivation of this development of this faculty, and at the same time create the right conditions, seek the right conditions that would enhance the development of that natural faculty. So these practices fall under the heading of what is called seeking the prerequisites, for cultivating tranquil abiding.
토미기 년산나라 초 교수 주승승샤 다 로베 까말실레 고림나리아 튕지 초 추송레 다 주도 뒤에 송레 단다다 창대 전다한테 되는 거돌이야 변화의 년세 아다 튕지 주승승의 나리아 교수 주승승의 나라但是就确实过的，明年我南朝了转把的，我们过当把赛就这样的，但是就这一个这个人民关的一个大的呀，听说过南朝人民的听说。
So with respect to the prerequisites that one must seek to cultivate tranquil abiding, in such as seeking a place of solitude, having the favorable conditions at easy disposal, easy access, and so on. In Asanga's Shravaka Bhumi, the levels of the disciple, he lists 13 such prerequisites for the cultivation of tranquil abiding. However, in Kamala Shila, these 13 prerequisites are summarized and presented in the list of 6 prerequisites. In Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chemo, when he talks about the prerequisites for cultivating tranquil abiding, he cites from Asanga's text. However, Asanga's text list includes those 4 practices which Tsongkhapa has already described in Lamrim Chemo in the context of post-meditational period practices, such as maintaining a healthy appropriate eating habit, food habit, and relation to one's sleeping patterns, and guarding one's doors of the senses, and acting in the world with a greater sense of awareness. These were already explained in the section dealing with the practices of the after-session periods.
다지네 교수도 인원을 다네 신의 권배 수련이 저도 무시 전에다 다도 무시를 류지처럼 친대로 거마다 권배를 뭐 니샤바스 다 류지처럼 다디 심 찌지고 가서 조윤도 전에 류기 나단데 다 저시하래 거치 류마 직다 녀대베서로 Did the in a dots, Chipaga Sheva Miso, Pashi Yosari. The leaders and the Ludichalam Dao Namang Church Dundan Saravo, and a number of the church gas, Udron Nebe, number of the church gas. Now the Gangba, Lakwa, Gavasum, Suchan, Dambeshi, Go, Mi, Chakwa, Utani, number of the churches. Down the denied of the year, Gamba Kimdron. That Chikirun Cheva in it, done young as looked on the Sichene. And Jukasheta, Gamba Kirun's Devotion, Kazosune, Yanko Matecha, the Induta, some would do that in a Kuja condition of Majuska. That Rodan Chevina, Gambaton Sikirun, Laqua, Yamsha, Yamawal, Yavakan, now measure the Genisha Yundu, Tewuni Zete. Should you soon sharp day? The Devet Hajade, those Gangba, Lapa. Kukolor thought, say, you're going to sorry.
I think he dropped something quite big.
나 강벌라고 개바 나도 상처에 계신 나도 상 강벌라고 개바서 소추 저는 담배 시사야 돼소 그런 벌샤 서도 쓰야 돼 뭐지 그런 벌샤 소 에디 and so many as on that Rubumasha Jazzing. So, Chodu is Mulisha. So, the general Domestic, just the Galajar, just the Galajar. The cavalry, any things in the Kasi, Chipa, Jambes or Chavina, Chimamasaya. Any just the Galajar design, Oak. Shoot does my job as sort of change occurring, come Magamea. Cavalry. Or Gambala, give Susan on Dambeshi. Now, then go to them, go. Make that dinner Nazi purpose. Joshua Susan and the Wuchum Shadow. Doesn't get a calendar. That no lily, no lily. Mignazi Pogosuna, Migna Stein, Sazanga, Yanko Tadabs doing to Stana, Mignazi Po. Because Vietnamese concentrate. Some of the Vietnamese or Chinese at Tibet also, I think, small nose, and then difficult to look at the tip of the nose. Chenida go mixture. Chapa Murcha. Gumi Chapa. Ukta Ukabajanda. She Ungambajanda, the Rumishia. Keta. What did you do? Namana's check.
So Tsongkhapa then explains the actual practice of cultivating tranquil abiding in the two main outlines. He says how to cultivate serenity on that basis, which is divided into two, which is preparation and the actual practice. And in the section on the preparation, he explains how to develop the meditative posture and the actual meditative process. So the first outline deals with the need to adopt an appropriate physical posture. And since in the practice of tranquil abiding, our main aim is to develop and cultivate and enhance our single-pointedness of our mind. Therefore, the physical posture really has a big impact. So, for example, if you try to do the practice by lying down instead of sitting upright, then the fact of lying down tends to bring your mind to a much more relaxed kind of, lazy state. So therefore, it's better to keep your body upright. And traditionally, when explaining the appropriate posture for meditation, one speaks of the sevenfold posture of Vairochana. And sometimes when you add the respiration process, we call it eightfold posture of Vairochana. So these seven are and deals with the posture of your legs, and the legs can be either completely cross-legged or half cross-legged as you normally would sit. And in any case, you need to adopt a posture that is for your legs that does not put too much strain on your knees. Otherwise, you will lose your focus. So that is the one. And then your hand posture. You can perform the meditation gesture with your left palm underneath and placing your right palm on top of it. And if you relate it to the posture according to the Vajrayana practice, then the preferred position is to have your two thumbs touching each other so that it forms a triangular shape there. So that's how... And your two arms should not be touching your body, but rather kept slightly outstretched, so that also next to your you have between your two arms there forms a natural triangular shape. And then the next is your spine, and the spine should be kept straight. And the text describes the posture as that your spine should be straight as an arrow. And then the next one is your teeth, but you should keep it in a natural state. Don't grit your teeth, but rather keep them natural. And if you don't happen to have teeth, then you have no choice anyway. And then for your lips, again, you should keep them in a natural posture. And in fact, those who do not have teeth, their lips look quite impressive because they're it's slightly stretched. And then the next is your eyes, and the text says that we should keep our eyes slightly downcast, focused upon at the level of the tip of our nose. So if you have a large... the tongue should be...
lip.
Yeah. No. So you keep your lips in the natural position. Don't force any posture on them. And then next is the tongue. The recommendation is to keep it slightly curled so that you touch the upper palate of the roof of your upper palate. And the advantage of that is that, for example, if you happen to really enter deeply into a meditative state, then this posture will protect you from having saliva drooping down. And also because of that, the position of the tongue, it has a natural effect on making your breathing less forceful. So that also has a benefit of ensuring that your mouth doesn't get unnecessarily dry. So those are the reasons why you keep your tongue in that position. And next is the position of the eyes. So you keep them slightly downcast and glancing at the point of the tip of your nose. And if you happen to have a large nose, rather like Joshua Cutler, then then you wouldn't have a problem because you can see the tip of your nose quite easily. But if you are like the Asians, like Vietnamese or Chinese or Tibetans, then you would have a rather flat nose. Then you shouldn't really try hard to see the tip of your nose because that is going to cause so much strain on your eyes. So basically keep it slightly downcast. And then next is the position of your head, again slightly bent.
Close eye or open eye. It's just natural.
Natural.
점점이야. 그 그로야도 상무스담이나 가서는 미도 숨자지 이거도가. 내가 그걸 뭘 사실은 지었다. 생아 미 좀나 야 대야 되었습니다. 야 미 당연히 맞아야지. 다또 띵인지 이룰 주고야래. 그래서 옹비셔버티베티 가서 ignore로 치워래. 저 드린 그 당군에 최근에는 미주미야 제외에는 그래서는 미 당야 제외에는 남산당야 그때 맞아 차용이지. 그 당군에 미도 그 럼벌도 시하지. 아니 그 미도는 지 통돼야 되기 만능이지. 그 이로 거래 가는 상당디야.
So as to the position of your eyes, as much as possible you should keep it in their natural position, slightly downcast, and not deliberately close them, because if you close them and do your meditation, and then the moment you open your eyes, and then your meditation gets disturbed. And in fact, since meditative state is being cultivated at the level of the mental consciousness, not at the level of the sensory experience, so therefore, when you meditate with your eyes slightly open and kept in the natural state, once in a while, naturally it will close, but then that's okay. But keep it kind of natural, and so that if you learn that habit, then the idea, because the meditation is taking place at the level of mental consciousness, after a while, because of being in that state, whatever happens to be in front of in the field of your vision will not affect you, because you become, in a sense, kind of oblivious to the sensory stimuli. Rather, you'll be able to maintain and remain in that meditative state. So, in other words, don't try to keep it closed. Just keep it naturally, and when you occasionally close, that's fine, but keep it natural. And then the position next is the position of the head, slightly bent, and then finally you have the position of the shoulders, and keep them slightly, again, natural but slightly extended. And then finally the position is the breathing process. Again, the breathing should not be too harsh or too slow, but rather, again, in a natural pace.
At the end, the unis chinando do judgments to do this. Just sort of checking it out. So, number Susanne, Pejdim, just Sangar, Kongwen Nani, Candia. So, that didn't matter. Or that Lungu, Chinando, judgments, sort of cello. Numbers to do it, Kongwen Nani, Sangar, Guavajans, Rindu Manuma.
So on page 31, Tsongkhapa actually describes what kind of pace of breathing that you should avoid in the context of tranquil abiding meditation. And he writes in the second para, your inhalation and exhalation should not be noisy, so that when you breathe there is a lot of noise, or forced, so that you are breathing too deeply, as if it's coming out of your abdomen, or uneven. So, in other words, he says, let it flow effortlessly, ever so gently, without any sense that you are moving it here or there.
Mixi can't to start the Mundua. Then so sing Combecadoria, make to tell that arrow. Under the Chitan Jim Butane, make those told that.
So, however, one must bear in mind that in different instructions on meditation, slightly the positions will differ. For example, particularly the eye position. Here, Tsongkhapa is describing the posture of the eyes in the context of general meditation practice of cultivating tranquil abiding. But in other contexts, for example, in the Kala Chakra Tantra, then the posture of the eyes are recommended to be kept really looking upwards, and then keeping your eyes open and looking upwards. Whereas in Dzogchen meditation, you look straight in front of you. Depending upon the context, instructions on some of the postures will differ.
다들 내 공부를 뭐 니셔봐. 다들 띵이지 겸이 기회에서 들어지는 심내 기회 좀 봐. 다 그죠. 다 당고 미국을 대비 뭐도 시다죠. 미국을 대비 주시다죠. 미국을 대비 어도 시다죠.
So then the second outline, the actual meditative process, is described in the following headings. Tsongkhapa explains them: how to develop flawless concentration, and what to do while focusing. Who should meditate on which objects, synonyms of the object of meditation, and so on. So within the first outline, he explains this: what to do prior to focusing the attention on the object of meditation, what to do while focusing on the object, and what to do after having focused one's attention to the object.
Yeah. 다들라 아니 네번 가본 누시게 땜베줄을 좀 으터네 소야. 당연히 네번 가대 아니 레로 아니 담아지가 미근제가 저는 친구니 직수체 저는 친구 중에체 네번도 미시로 직체 견직체 다 친구 뭐 좋아 다 섬내 개봐 다 친구 뭐 다스네 가도 친구 뭐 좋은 체 선배 띵지 겸이 옆에 그 돌이야 그냥 좋아하잖아 그냥 그 견이 내일선에 도시 당뇨 다 공부야 지송이 말이 그래서 네봐 네번 같이 네번 가보네 년부도시 개서 다데 당보 레로 년부 가서 레로 개개인 있잖아요 디세알이야 대바다 듬바다 저 신장 대시부디 레로니고 다시 가나데 신장기다 변하게 한데 즉 신장 톰나 루심 아니 가서 우리 그게 찌들 쬐셔지 랑 대바는 신기 다 루심니부터 걸서 쳐야래 사진이 뭐 인도잖아요 저는다 편이다 다들 지난 통을 들었다 다 안다 건데 되게 쉬운 지시네 가다가다 바라가다 상고도 못 해서 왔다 다 신의 매나 야야 매듯이 차트가 인도잖아요 디디 셰베타네 디디 셰베체 다 디셰베타네 띵은지게 연전 통에다 대봐 달을 때네 대외 장배 듬바 되니 달을 때네 좋아 디디게 내리는 거지 그렇지.
So in the actual explanation of how to cultivate the flawless concentration, Tsongkhapa proceeds with a citation from Maitreya's differentiation of discrimination of the middle and the extreme. In this text, Maitreya speaks of 5 flaws of meditation and the 8 antidotes against these faults. And the 5 faults are listed as a form of laziness or indolence, and forgetting of the object, and mental excitation and mental laxity as counted as one. And the fourth is failing to apply the antidotes when mental excitation or mental laxity arises. And then the fifth obstacle or fault is excessive application of exertion. So especially at more advanced levels, when the quality of the mental stability is very firm, then in those moments, in those stages, then application of effort in fact becomes counterproductive. So therefore one needs to maintain a state of equanimity. So inappropriate application of effort or exertion is also a fault. So corresponding to these 5 faults, 8 antidotes are identified. So in relation to the first fault, which is laziness or indolence, Asanga lists 4 antidotes. These are faith or confidence, and aspiration, and effort, and pliancy. And the faith here refers to a kind of a feeling of trust in the quality and benefits based upon the awareness of the benefits of meditative stabilization. And and particularly by reflecting upon the benefits of which is the physical and mental suppleness. Because when you attain meditative stabilization, it gives you physical and mental pliancy that enables you to make your body and mind serviceable. And so this, and also when you can apply your body and mind at your will. So these are, of course, benefits of concentration, which is common to both Buddhist and non-Buddhist practitioners. So since here, in this Lamrim context, we are cultivating tranquil abiding with the ultimate aim of applying it to our understanding of the ultimate nature of reality, because without tranquil abiding, vipassana, the special insight, cannot arise. So we recognize that the special benefits of having gained tranquil abiding. So by reflecting upon these qualities, then you develop a kind of a deep trust in the efficacy and in the benefits of meditative concentration. So this is what is meant by faith or trust. Second is based on that trust or faith, then what the interest, aspiration to cultivate that state arises in you. And then on the basis of the aspiration and interest brought forth by this confidence and trust, then willingness to apply the effort will arise. So in this way, the problem of the fault of laziness or indolence is overcome. So with relation to the second fault, which is the forgetfulness of the object of meditation, the main antidote here is the cultivation of mindfulness. And corresponding to the third fault, which is the mental excitation and mental laxity, when they arises, the antidote that needs to be applied is meta-awareness, awareness or meta-awareness, samprajñana. So with respect to the fourth fault, which is the failure to apply the necessary antidotes when excitation and laxity arises, the antidote to that is the cultivation of the intention to apply it. And the fifth fault, which is the inappropriate application of exertion or effort. And here, because in some context, the application of effort is counterproductive because it could undermine the quality and stability of the meditative state. Therefore, here the counterforce is cultivating an equanimity.
Yeah. That's the end. No, time you have 미국을 뜨베 투수 지도 차와 사들이야 심 강조고 미국 무슨 tel라 심 뜨베스 기타 미국 무슨 tel라 다 대안다 좀 전에 옛날 저 미국 시송데스 케베 미국지 잡아 남주고 미국지 케베 미국지 녀모 나버주 미국지 미국 시송이 말이야 지신에게 미국이야 지금은 치료도 다 디신으로 된 미국 최초야 돼. 다른 신 난게 지다 가시고 그러나 더 좋아지도 된 미국 최초면로 제가 간다 빨리 류자반이셔 섬자반이셔 소화자반이셔 slu잖아요. 그걸 미국 소소스 내고도 와. 자 다른데 디 by young Kevin want to send soon to Kevin Buddha. Any to go back Kevin and the Dane, Java Namjo me Buddha. Nar Numu, that Chen, Tata, she Numu Karsha Chigane, Karsha Choyana, Ted Dune, Mikutan, Jiggy, Java Namjo Miba. Kevin was said, Kenjur, then Junjur. 캐버샤 날이야다 미국 때는 있잖아요. 캐버린 쪽 있잖아요. 캐버 미국. 얘는 용어 넘버 좀 미국.
So then Tsongkhapa explains the next outline, which is what to do at the moment when you are focusing your mind on the object of attention. And this is explained in terms of two subheadings. First, identifying the object of meditation, and the second, how to apply one's attention to those objects. So in the context of identifying the appropriate object of one's concentration, generally in the text, in general, one can choose for one's object of meditation any external or internal phenomena. For example, one can choose just a pebble or a twig or a stick as an object of meditation to cultivate single-pointedness. Similarly, one can choose an internal mental state, such as an experience of a feeling as an object of meditation and cultivate single-pointedness on that basis. For example, if you look at the teaching on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, a foundation of mindfulness on body, on feeling, or on feeling, on mind, and on mental objects, you can see that these meditations include both external and internal objects as the object of one's meditation. However, when the meditation object is explained in general, 4 main types of objects are identified. One is referred to as the pervasive object, and second is object that is appropriate to the experience or emotional temperament of the individual practitioners. So here the point is that due to whatever factors, past or present, individuals may have different temperaments, emotional kind of styles, and whatever emotion type may be more dominant in an individual person, and corresponding to that, one needs to choose objects that will be more effective. So that's the second type of object. The third type of object is referred to as the object of the wise or the learned. And here it includes those fields of knowledge, with relation to which one is cultivating an understanding. So so you choose these objects, including enumerations of list and stuff, and then cultivate single-pointedness in relation to them. And the fourth is a specific object you choose in order to kind of diminish the afflictions. So these are the four main types of or classes of objects that are identified.
Yeah. That is the window that it is. 다 샴데 거수 법에 뭐 무슨 와서야 돼. 다 미벌이야. 나 치르기 다 치르기 미고. 다디 어나 치르기 미고. 야 다음에 신경 난기 기부류 제 잔내다. 다가다 자롱 틀리지 되게 미고 미진샤. 다야 서버직디 심 미진샤. 심런이를 미고 줘야. 내 영샤야래. 아니 텔레초도 줘야지. 동일을 미고 신내 거야. 어디니? 다시 따도는 고마워서야 돼. 따왔다는 법리. 따와 녀등의 강사직이 다 녀를 제공체니 동번이 넘버 로로 샤야 셰 되네 동니 대가랑이 제시도 미네 고마워야지. 다들 따도는 고마워서야 돼. 다들 오무신도 넘보 지금 와도 가고 싶다래. 다 공도는 따왔어요 사실이야. 냐라 당도 주주자도 공도는 따왔어야 돼. 냐라 공부대. 다 관배 냠용 템베 그도리야. 아니 다에 잡아야지. 공도는 따왔어야 돼. 다 심리적인 샤니 신의 공야성인데 아주 착신 속신도 되다 망체 가다 냐라 심리 저 추진 개발와 다셈 대례 심 차라 다도 동안 두무도 제가 있는 심 차라 마셔셔 땅아 두무모임 벽관에 침배 있는 심 차라 chen 다 드는 거야 다 심 차라 쳤어야 돼 고에 쳐서 모임 다 냠용도는 치고야 그래서 저 가오도가 아니 다 냠내 먹고 싶었던 제용이야 래 근데 타네 아니 가서 우리 그게 냐를 추제 생 차라가 있는 대인 넘버 로리아 샤셰 되네 등이도 제시도 미네 엔다 등도 줘야지 대중은 사실 좀 시작해 사실 좀 다 들으지 공발이야 냐라 다당가라도 셈디 아니 하는다 공에 쉐바 디기 숙청부시셔제 일루 사점 직점 영점지 로를 치르면도 봐. 지 로크리즘 것도 줄이네. 양은 치료가 속도로 써봐. 양은 난게 뒤도군요. 드르르 지금 남발이야고 샷야지. 자, 드르르 지금 남발고 샷되는 시기 차들이 전에 그 치던 난게 남바 대단 대 생금 모두 들대서 또 와. 자, 드레인들다 대외 지금 가서 그게 참바 드레긴 남도들이 바까 결모 주시. 마음발 중주기 지게야 남도 담면데 또 수야 뒤에 바까. 다 다다 지금 다 로컬 산이 지금 써만 맞춰봐 샤샤지. 디지털 안에 합칼이야 남규달로 친한 게 지금 가수레베 유진데겠다 그 넘버를 주고 샤트도 전에 디바셀 슈데 즉 동벌 샤지 디 동니께서 말해 다디 디른 도스 바 내추럴 또 링도 땅투나 영수진에 세점 릭점 명점지 먼저 쳐야지 다 디총수는 최신 그래서다 생그정신 지다 생그 진입의 정신 생그 군수의 정신 진입서를 생그 군수의 정신이 아니 뭔가 소위 버려 나 dimig진 샤니 네그지 디땡 주님 잡아내면 다 걸어라 다 심 제시도 미고 셔야 다 섬을 신내준다 들으셔
So then Tsongkhapa explains, identifies the particular object that is relevant to our present context. And here, generally speaking, when we are talking about an appropriate object that we choose for our meditation of tranquil abiding or shamatha, one can choose, as explained before, an external object, a material object, or one can also choose internal phenomena.
네, 슬로그 빅딘 체수잖아요. 빅딘 디기 넘버 1 샷부터 dirta 빅딘 숭년 사이즈도 하왔다 드리.
So even when we take an external object to be our object of meditation, what we are focusing upon is not the physical thing itself, but rather the image of the physical thing that we create in our mind, and that becomes the object of our concentration. One can also choose an internal phenomena such as one's channels, drops, and the energies that flow within the channels and so on. And also a kind of a more profound object that one can choose for one's meditation on tranquil abiding is one's own mind. And more profound than that is choosing emptiness as one's object of meditation for tranquil abiding. So when we choose emptiness as the object of one's meditation on tranquil abiding, this already presupposes that you have a realized emptiness. And so this practitioner would have already gone through a process of analysis and have discerned realized emptiness through this process and have already attained the correct view of emptiness. And then, having experienced emptiness, one takes the emptiness as the object of one's meditation and then cultivates a single-pointedness in relation to this. And this is a process, what is referred to as seeking meditation on the basis of the view. Seeking meditation on the basis of a view, and this kind of approach is really possible only for a handful few whose mental faculties are really advanced. But the approach presented in the Lamrim Chemo here is really seeking the view on the basis of meditation. So here, the practitioners try to cultivate tranquil abiding first, and then on the basis of tranquil abiding, then one begins to apply analysis and gain realization of emptiness. So this is the general procedure here. And so, however, if you choose your own mind as the object of your meditation on tranquil abiding, then this approach is quite common in the approach of the Mahamudra trained practices, the Great Seal, and the Great Perfection Dzogchen practices, where meditation on single-pointedness on mind is the main focus in cultivating tranquil abiding. So if we do that within the context of a path that is common to Sutra and Tantra, then we do not make distinctions about the various levels of subtlety of consciousness. But if we bring in the highest Yoga Tantra perspective, then one can also differentiate the different levels of subtlety of consciousness and choose a more subtle level of consciousness as the object of meditation on tranquil abiding. And so, however, the problem is, in order to do this,
내 뒤도가 다 너무 공부 시험 공부 해야 돼. 미다보다 다음에 와서는 진당 유지는 거야. 대박 공인지 공부. 다 외세 공부도 전에 배시 시험 소리지.
So here also we need to take into account different understanding of what is meant by meditation and how they differ with relation to the object and how that object figures in that meditation. For example, when you meditate on impermanence or no self, then you are taking impermanence and no self as the object of your meditation. They become the content of your meditation. Whereas if you meditate on compassion or loving kindness or faith, devotion, then you are not taking faith, devotion or compassion as the object of your meditation, but rather you are cultivating your own mind in that state. So similarly, when you do meditation on mind, nature of mind, particularly at this subtle level where clear light becomes the main object of your meditation, here in fact you are trying to cultivate your mind in the state of clear light. So this is a different kind of a role the object plays. And however, when you are focusing on the mind, then mind becomes the object of your meditation. However, in order to do this, first of all, you need to identify. So when we say, your mind should focus upon the mind, we should not have the impression that we are talking about a single instance of mind somehow looking at itself, because that would mean self-cognition. What we are talking about is kind of quite a process that is happening at a very minute temporal frame. So, for example, one can see that the immediately latter instance of the mental state is focusing upon the immediately preceding instance. So the problem is, in order to do this kind of meditation, where you take mind as the object of your tranquil abiding, first of all, you need to identify the object, and you need to have some understanding of what mind is. And the problem is, in our normal day-to-day experience, our mind is so dominated either by external, stimuli or internal sensations. So either our mind is just directed totally outwards and takes on the form of whatever objects come in our way in the field of our experience, or we experience our mind in the form of internal sensations. So, and caught in this kind of way of experiencing the mind, it feels as if the actual nature of the mind itself gets somehow obscured, either by the perceptions of the external world or the sensations of the internal experiences. So the essential nature of the mind, which is this mere knowing and subjective experience, this quality somehow gets obscured. So in order to overcome this, one needs to find a way of somehow capturing this essential quality of the mind, which is mere luminosity and knowing. And to do this, one needs to meditate, which would involve somehow ensuring that your focus is not kind of, hijacked by certain recollections of past experiences, nor by thoughts projecting into the future with some kind of anticipation or hope and so on. And we need to prevent the mind looking backwards and prevent the mind looking forward into the future, and somehow maintain in the present moment. And the problem is, because our mind is so dominated by this kind of looking backwards and forwards, when you try to prevent those kind of processes, and when you experience the mere present, one feels as if one experiences a kind of emptiness. Now, this is of course not the emptiness in the philosophical sense. This is a mere absence. And initially it may be just a fleeting experience, but as you habituate, as you familiarize in this practice, one will be able to stretch that period of time during which you've experienced this absence. So in this way, so when we say identify the mind as the object of your meditation, we're not talking in the intellectual sense, we're talking in an experiential sense. So through this meditation, you will be able to experience a sense of mind in the form of this absence. And then gradually, the essential quality of the mind on the conventional level, which is this mere luminosity and knowing, will become more and more obvious. And once you have that, then you then take that as the object of your meditation and cultivate Shamata or tranquil abiding on that basis.
Nyamda lela ta lela ta yanchi koba shanyang yedaba ta di ane tubeku saitam ta chariya ane mingne ta samne chuya dosin pare ta tubeku koba ina oda pena chulu shanda zue pena sosu pena Jesus Christ komya soro yana cross komya soro tene chetso zuwa.
So here in Lama Tsongkhapa's text, Lama Chemo, he recommends taking the image of the Buddha as our object of meditation on tranquil abiding. Of course, partly it is easier, and partly also it has a very special significance for the Buddhist practitioners. So given this, for other practitioners of other religious traditions, they can choose an object that will have a special significance to their own practice, such as the image of the Jesus Christ, or maybe even a cross.
No, I'm wondering, Islam practitioner, what kind of image? Mecca? I don't know. Sintong borwa, ka. Ka.
Calligraphy.
Yigidi. What tiga? Allah tiga. Only the yigidi me to you, Pajamento, maybe such a wonder. And yigidi kunjo marwa. Yigidi kunjo marwa. Yigidi kunjo marwa ta. Ta kunjo karota. Yigidi kaso yigidi mi butan kareta de.
It looks like an anagram, like a mantra. Looks like that.
아, 대야오도 다 대야오도. 군조 산을 다 미고 싶어서 그래. 전에 땅한테 땅어 어다 두용 보고 쌌다고 이나 봐. 두용 보고 아니 냠충즈잖아. 다지야 미부터 그저 차주는 뒤쪽이 심디 침질해야지. 다시 야야. 자, 뒤돌아 아니 그게 당시 싸워 어디는 시험 담배이나 칭원 마요하다 그거지 용기야. 되네 꾸디지 지지디 그렇지. 매배이나 초급 마요하다 참 패야지 그래.
So if we choose image of the Buddha as object of our meditation of tranquil abiding, then earlier Professor Dharma was suggesting that in the case of Muslim practitioners, maybe they can use the calligraphy, the letters and the name of Allah. If we choose the image of the Buddha as the object of meditation, it is beneficial to choose a slightly smallish size, because the smaller size of the image can have the effect of making your mind more alert. And then also, as much as possible, imagine this image to be quite bright, like a light. And the more bright and quality of light that you bring in, it will have that effect of ensuring that your mind does not sink into a form of mental laxity. And also, you should try to imagine this image to be rather heavy, so this kind of weight by imagining this image to be kind of rather weighty, will have the effect of protecting you from the arising of mental scattering and mental excitation.
That is meeting Joshua. That meeting tell her, that was shallow Nicola. Tangella, Tembe, meeting Turi Sunday. Meeting this Lone Canepa Malabshe. That Digalia, that meeting Malayati, Tembeson. That meeting Digal, Ned is an sim ching ruchi, Tangduru Rochi, Marsharuko Marches, Tangduru meeting it, the Nyop Devas of Chavina, Chimoli Gorda. That did Chiminiambo, Chiminium Sorbeta, Chimole Maliti, Chingule Maliti, Shishin Ruche. That Chimoda Gabadi Troy Chajimere. That Gaban Deja Chatori. That is Shukshay we are, Ranzulia. Architect. Do you take that? No, I delay some young adults, Manga, you use an question so to see the sunshine. So the lead is an that Gaba talking you with the Cardicellian words, don't Sim Tim Ta Pang Total Young. Thus, Chingwa said the Sim Pang much of a game. What the name is that Chingu book on the stress level, some pang, Chimoy is an some pang tortang wari. Gabay is an Togo is an some pang martang wari. Or that day, some pang tortoyadi, Chigave, Migbo Yid Shavina. Tako, because some pang matan, Chime, Yun Lay is an Make them malabetone, simple sujine, Yanjita, Lolia, Donalea, Chanju some companion sorrow, Doni Payong sorrow, but the little bit some tamina, Loya, Chicta, any down is tanjo, the lega some time do, Lord Donaria legundu, Lopang Tortoa. That does in Chimosil. That Togo Yobecola, some pang to Tabet in Duzane, and some nang to Duyag. 탑시리야. 지금 미다와 상담하고 지금 다가는 신 누지기 등에 상담하서 내도 상담하나 양고 방말로 해야지. 다도 쓰자.
So having chosen the appropriate object for your meditation on tranquil abiding, then in the actual practice, when you are cultivating single-pointedness of mind, one needs to apply and maintain mindfulness in a very undistracted manner. So the maintenance and application of mindfulness is really the key. So and it is the mindfulness that will ensure that you do not lose your attention from the object that you have chosen, the object of your focus. And so, however, whether or not you lose your object, your attention from the object of your meditation as a result of arising of distraction or mental laxity, and that role is performed by application of the faculty of meta-awareness, awareness that monitors whether excitation or mental laxity has arisen. So it's the mindfulness that ensures that your attention is retained on the chosen object, and it is meta-awareness that monitors whether or not you have lost your object. And when so the two main obstacles are really mental excitation and laxity. So the excitation, mental excitement, really belongs to the family of attachment, and this tends to be more easily occurring in us because of our long habituation to things that attract us. So mental excitation is a problem that will arise much more easily. And of course, the effect of the arising of mental excitation is to distract our mind. And so when mental excitation arises, and then it is an indication that your state of mind is too uplifted. So one needs to find a way of dampening it down. And so the main counter kind of antidote against this is to find a method that would bring the state of your mind to a slightly more dampened state. And here, meditating upon impermanence or a recollection of your understanding of the suffering of conditioning, conditioned existence, these things can be very effective because it will immediately have the effect of dampening your mind so that it's brought down to a more kind of less uplifted state of mind. When mental sinking arises, this is a state of mind where although you may have not lost your object, but there is no alertness. So the mind is kind of slightly in a relaxed state of mind. So when that happens, the reason why that happens is because your mind is not lifted enough. Your mind is in a very downcast state. So, and the antidote against this is to apply a method that would bring the level of your mind to a more uplifted state. And to do this, one can reflect upon the benefits of cultivating bodhicitta, awakening mind. One can reflect upon the benefits of the wisdom of emptiness or the correct view. And one can also contemplate upon the preciousness of the human existence and the opportunity it accords us. So by reflecting upon these facts, you can create a sense of joy in you, and this joy will uplift your state of mind, so that in that way one will be able to overcome the problem of mental laxity. So in this way, one needs to apply the antidotes when either of these two obstacles arise in the mind.
ngānādu lā tāngu pāli yā pē sēmna mīgu nāngshīngi chāmu tīyé mē mē chē yā pēchī chirīgu mīgu lē yā tā chā sō shī mē rō wū rōng jāng lā sāṁ tāng nē yā tē yā hu tō wā wū rōng wū khu pā jāng sāṁ tāng shē wū rōng tā kā jāng tō sō lō sē shī kā tē wē yī na yā mīg tīng shirā kā rā kwa yā mē nē shirā kā chāmu yā mē tē wā tē yā hu yā sō shī tō wā.
So for many of us who are on the beginner stage, then choosing the breathing process as the object of our meditation may be actually very beneficial, because the advantage of this is that it's not as subtle as choosing mind as the object of meditation, nor is it too gross as choosing an external material object as our object. So by choosing simply our breathing process and, applying our, directing our focus and attention simply on the breathing process itself can be a very effective way of doing this Shamata meditation. So for example, one can choose the breathing process, the inhalation and exhalation, as the object of one's meditation, and then place one's mind, one's awareness simply on that, and maintain the focus for 100 rounds or 1,000 rounds of the breathing. Some of my acquaintances who meditators, they told me that when they choose their breathing and breath as the object of meditation and maintain their awareness simply upon the breathing for up to 100 rounds or 1,000 rounds, then the mind becomes really settled.
농로 구조사야 되는 용도와 그래서 나는 남주 직선 투 대배 거는데 양고 투 대배 전다디 바 양약 탑시다 운동 당량도 상다 대배는 되게 심2 대배 지저고 가서 그게 나셔죠 봐. 그만 잘 된대 잡아요.
So also in the Vajrayana practices, meditation practices, breathing exercises are described as a preliminary stage before going into the actual Vajrayana sadhana practice. And so these breathing practices involve 9 rounds of breathing. And so it seems the breathing meditation is very effective, particularly for us, even in our day-to-day life, when we find our mind in a disturbed state or agitated or irritated state, simply by drawing our attention to our breath and doing a breathing and focusing on that has an immediate effect of bringing down this level of disturbance that has been caused by the earlier emotions or states of mind. So of course, that type of breathing exercises is more like taking a respite, a temporary kind of relief. It's not that effective, but it's more of a taking a rest.
That's also sort of a shiver. That was a nyok to Yambakadoria. That she could take dangerous on Taro, then she do dangerous on Taro, and it changes something needs the sound down. That is a pension.
So, for example, in responding to adversity or some difficulties, breathing exercises may provide a temporary relief, but it is only a rest from that dealing with that problem. The more effective, of course, lasting approach is to reflect upon dependent origination, interdependence of things, reflecting upon their impermanence, and also cultivating the wisdom of emptiness, and reflecting deeply upon the benefits of bodhicitta, awakening mind, and so on. These will, of course, be much more effective and powerful practices.
That did 신의 주야. that tunzu never came married. That Tabuben Nigola, Tun Tundung Changmangxia, go Butaoxia, the caching, and go Butaoji, Tun Tundungji Bene, and go for Changmangxia, do so corner. Any Butaodi, Buga, Shandu Mushibegane, Tun down to any way.
So as to the number of sessions and the length of sessions, there is no fixed number. So here, for the beginners, generally it is recommended to keep the sessions short, but have more frequency. So, so it's better to have shorter sessions, but more in number. And so as you progress and advance in your practice, then while retaining the quality that you are able to bring when you do these short sessions, so while retaining the quality, then you can gradually increase the length of the session. So that's a better approach.
That other combe, Rimbe in Semnekidia, Semneku. That in Giata, the name Lucian, Giatis. Traditional Tomne, Jilever Lamgi, that Jilever Handon, Gomiaina, and it sends to the wages of easy to the Sondua. And then
so by on that basis, by adopting the right length of the session and applying the actual practices as described in formal sitting, then one progressively will go through the attainment of the 9 stages of mental development, and culminating in the attainment of tranquil abiding shamatha, which is characterized by the attainment of physical and mental suppleness or pliancy. And once you have that quality of mental pliancy and have attained tranquil abiding shamatha, then on that basis, one is able to then cultivate vipassana, special insight. And in the Lamrim, in this particular section, goes on to explain how a kind of a mundane type of vipassana can be cultivated on the basis of tranquil abiding. So with that, the explanation on the section of Lamrim Chemo dealing with the cultivation of tranquil abiding is completed. So the next main outline is the method by which one cultivates a special insight in relation to suchness, the reality.
다들 항동시면 우드마 뒤도가 고문 발배 말 고문 당부 롱디 타나네 디슈구데 도들레 지게도 지된다나 띵지 검제장 되는 다도 도신 직미시 되는 용어 치신 소도도 타주기네 띵지 늙음신 신 전에다 상배 태괴 다 땡인지 겁니 아니 지에면 제가 묘모 문주와 바다 묘모 문주와 베르시 그게다 방 과야 된데 용토에 버려 레디티 아니 또 시라가 나빠진 거 남 고민이잖아요 지 롱제제 딱 감도 이디 지 아니 나 waksalarawa soreta waksalarawa rangsala shiwa shiraga nabachen tajimado dendegi long chebab daadi kaangla kuyogagi jegimdo ganda daadi kaangla anda ko todori ke yungdo ga dagdo dushia ga tala todori ke chimdo ga sa dende indusane ta 어디서 yin 말에 직전자는 띵지 검제장 되는 다도도시 직미치 다도 따왔대 고 가서래 다도 따와도 누구매에 만유도 다도 따왔대 아니 다연한의 현두시 다현 차는 전다당 대다다는 용절래 여자들 좋은 줄은 남진의 소원만 시제 다른 생각은 냠용도 삼다베이네 우먼주가 소원은 당부 맛이 다를 생겨시 다게 디싱을 차게 봐 선이 또 생각되기도 봐 사실은 인도산에 최정의 다도 좀버디 숙체여 대책이 너희 좀버디 숙체 강 너희에 이제 내니도로 서고 뒤로 삼으라야 즉 다도 지금에 가서 현차하고 숙시 주셔도 되고 자 드리면 인도 다 산제베 최근에 아니 지금 가서 우리 차단게 로트스 영향하게 자로 투서디 다도 좀 되게 제용이하래 진짜 산제베 최가 영상 송기하래 산제베 좀더 영상 송기하래 근데 인도 시라가 나바전지 다 신의 톱니 시라가 나바전 예람 컨디시 거바 이나양 대 다돈 준비 묘모데 랴 토도르시 도민도스 대슈중당 도민도 팀에서 도민도 근데 인도자네 당진 대견베 묘모 리시 문조와 다스마 슈총르시베 이나양 양견의 차는 묘모데 게임 그래서 가르스 먹고 사는 빵요 말마스 네 달 하주스네 배점된 용지지면 괜히 전에 왔다때 벨송이 말이야. 사주기는 띵진 들금신.
So in the opening section of Tsongkhapa's presentation of special insight, which is on page 107, I think it's chapter 7 of the book. He cites from Samadhi Raja Sutra, King of Meditation Sutra, where Buddha states the following: although worldly persons cultivate concentration, they do not destroy the notion of self. The point that is being made in this sutra citation is that although people who attain a tranquil abiding and on that basis cultivate a special insight that involve comparing the characteristics of the states of desire realm and higher realms, and on that basis cultivate attainment of the form and formless states. Although they have attained and heightened states of mind, but because the focus here is more on the characteristics of the different realms, therefore, so far as the grasping at one's own self is concerned, these meditations leave the grasping at self totally intact and untouched. And because of this, the grasping remains in them. And so long as the self-grasping remains in the individual, then as Dharmakirti points out in his Pramanavartika, Exposition of Valid Cognition, where he says, where there is self, then there is the notion of the other. And on the differentiation of self and other, then attachment and aversion arises, which then give rise to a whole host of problems. Similarly, from our own personal experience, we can attest to what Chandrakirti states in his Entering the Middle Way, when he says that first we grasp at the notion of I am, self, and then from there we grasp at things as mine. So we know that when there's a strong grasping at self, then the grasping at things that belong to you, things that are related to you, including your own friends and families, and the stronger the grasping is, the stronger it leads to attachment, aversion, and so on. And in fact, one thing that is common, one insight that is common to all the Buddhist schools is the recognition that it is the grasping at self that lies at the root of the afflictive mental states such as attachment and aversion. So it is grasping at the self that give rise to these afflictions. That insight is common to all schools of Buddhism. So because the meditation on tranquil abiding and mundane vipassana based upon it do not touch and do not undermine this grasping at self, so even the person who has attained such advanced state is vulnerable to the arising of these afflictions. So therefore, the sutra says that afflictions return and disturb them. So the point being made here is that although in those heightened meditative states, gross levels of afflictions may have been temporarily diminished, but because their seeds of these afflictions have not been removed, eliminated, therefore, when the conditions arises, then these afflictions will resurface. And then the sutra gives the example, as they did with Udraka, who cultivated concentration in this way. So Udraka was historically one of the earlier teachers of the Buddha. So Buddha is giving Udraka as an example of this.
That's the issue there. 이 다가는 롱도 장요래 다한테 대 송샤다 되한다. 개지철로 다음에 소소도 소소tada 개지 공변에 아니 되는 양인데도 Refuge. 쟤네 개지 다 개지철로다 개지 다다. 다 강동도 것이 풍소치. 양나 롱저버 다다. 롱제제 풍소치. 다 녀얼레버보다 녀얼렘바 아니 풍소치. 디천배 최대 담절로 아니 로로 나오는 신 다 된중문에 다 어찌단 다디 작으면도 된중문에 주에 다도 주어지 매버지 통이나 개체라 다음에 소소도 소소도 같이 양의 양도 검신 집을 전에 내가 띵치버지 탐니 아니 가나 좀더 차야지 좋아이나 아니 다도 집어티 다도 집어들 내용 그래스 림베게 다도 집어티 생기 시도 shum마베 인도잖아 아니 림베게 집안 대토래 되는 양인데도 레뷰도 소이 버려 다와나 다음에 관변 양대 터봐 신도 아니 터 현식이야 관배 다음에 터봐 에유스라나 다음에서 타바 터봐 에유스라나 타바 터봐 고니버스 버들 에유스라바 이나 디메스 가서 두신 강인된 실민주 참바다 닝질로 써봐 다 타바 터야기 타바도 선지지 먹고 반 터야기 두 인데부터 주제디 타바 선지지 먹고 반 터야 레디 있네 다도 좀 때나 그 내셔내셔로 송도베 인도잖아 대방에 있냐 뭐 제도고 말해 송이
in continuing the citation from the sutra, in the latter section, Tsongkhapa cites on page 108 another quotation from the same sutra when he cites the following. If you analytically discern the lack of self in phenomena, and if you cultivate that analysis in meditation, the citation goes, this will cause the result, attainment of nirvana. So what the sutra is stating is that if in contrast, the person is able to discern the lack of self in all phenomena by means of critical analysis that discriminates into the characteristics of phenomena, then and particularly lack of selfhood in the sense of all phenomena being devoid of existence in their own right by means of an inherent nature, then and as one cultivates the familiarity of that understanding and develops a deep sense of ascertainment and conviction and internalize that understanding within oneself, then one will be able to recognize all phenomena in the light of an illusion-like quality. And so when that happens, this insight will undermine the grasping at self. And since the grasping at self, which is the deluded mental state, is not an inseparable, essential quality of the mind itself, then as a result of gaining insight into the nature of mind, this grasping at this deluded state of mind can be removed. And in this way, the pollutants of the mind will be eliminated, and in this way, this will lead to the attainment of nirvana. So the sutra states that this will cause the result, attainment of nirvana. And then the question arises, are there any other gateways or doors to liberation other than the realization of no self? Whether there is an alternative second door or a third door. And then here the Buddha states that there is no peace or there is no tranquility through any other means. And here, as Dharmakirti points out in his Pramanavartika, a valid exposition of valid cognition, that given that loving kindness and so on do not directly counteract, oppose ignorance, they cannot eliminate ignorance. So here, the sutra is also stating that although cultivation of loving kindness and so on are conditions necessary to attain Buddhahood, but because they do not directly oppose or counteract the perspective of self-grasping, they cannot be the antidote powerful enough to eliminate them. It is only the realization of no self that is the antidote that will eliminate the grasping.
Yeah. 다잖아. 니버 상동로 럽수를 시. 상동 그 초된바. 상동 그 럽도야와. 상동 권배수. 권배 상동 주배 차. 시. 다 상동 그 초된바 될래야. 퇴상부. 내가 다한테 급지다 상도 지도되고 상도로 왔다. 지도되고 상도 지도되고 상도 인도산에 다 검제 미국 대권하니 뒤니 내가 받다는 법이 퇴상부 시험시고 그래서
So then the actual
다지는 상도 교수 현다인데 이게 다리야 신라니 교수 이게 다 송사송
So then the actual section on how to train one's mind in the cultivation of a special insight, this is explained in 4 broad outlines. First is seeking the prerequisites for cultivation of special insight. And second is the various kinds of divisions of special insight. And third is the actual method of meditating upon cultivating special insight. And fourth is the measure of having attained a special insight. So with respect to the first, which is the prerequisites for cultivating special insight, many of the prerequisites that are common to cultivating tranquil abiding have already been explained. But here, since in order to cultivate special insight in relation to emptiness, which is what we are concerned about here, one needs to first of all cultivate the understanding of emptiness, which is the object with relation to which we are seeking the special insight. So one needs to develop an understanding of emptiness, at least at the intellectual level. So this is one of the main prerequisites that one must cultivate, one must seek.
That's 그래서 condition은 이게 다가다가 차게 시스템을 최선을 동시 다음에 봐 신이 나고 용서로送给요 그래서 이제 다 다음에 대마 소인도 전에 아니 다 뒤져 다 산제베 다 뒤져 나래야 아니 로 제 감담을 맨자고 이거 인도 전에 대왕계 점된데 아니 어제 가려가다 그래서 자시로 이미 자시로 나로래 양다 가사 시선당 수주 주문도 간다에는 거리 지양다고 여서한도 거리 양다고 면서한도 된저 소야래 다가는 신기 동이든 주변 나리 왜다 아니 투베 수베 시가 가와래 신 시가 나와 뭐 있는 사실 패시 용어요 저는 송로로 장내 쳐거든 마도 신 송제로도 자치심바 캐라나 그 말이 송야래 자 드리인데 빼나 그래서는 아니 디시시를 송거실이야 아니 풍부한 쿨쿠어 보내 가사고 송시시기요 다 되게 아니 풍불레 로소 쿨쿠어 보지 다 쿨던다 풍부디 쿨겐기 쿠어 보지 로소 예라케 예바 다르지 송도가 자 할람데 풍불레 텐션에 다 유조서 시고 거들을 유조 다양 너 시그널이야 아니 강사매 레유 풍부유 송샤 되지요다 다양 숑거 시그널이야 너거 시그널 아니 치르메 셈때버 좀 인송돼 아요 다양 너거 시래 아니 친한 니가로 아니 때버메 셈 송샤야 되지요 저들이 이르잖아요 아니 좀 된데 니지다 깨나라 뒤제 감다 매베 캬바다 뛰니 숭셰베다 송다 만다 먹고 여be 인도산에 다 디디 여치 고요래.
So now with relation to the question of cultivating the understanding of ultimate nature of reality, which is the focus of our practice here, in general, as explained before, all the Buddhist schools share the adherence to upholding the four fundamental seals of Buddha Dharma, these being all conditioned phenomena are impermanent, all contaminated phenomena are in the nature of suffering, all phenomena are empty and devoid of selfhood, and nirvana is true peace. However, as to how the Buddha's teaching on no self or anatman is understood, there is a divergence of understanding among the Buddhist schools depending upon how one understands the teachings. So here, if you look at the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha's teaching reflect a recognition of the diversity among his followers in terms of mental dispositions, spiritual inclinations, and philosophical inclinations, and so on. So they are dependent, because of this, corresponding to this, there is a diversity of teachings. For example, Nagarjuna, or for example, states in Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way, where he acknowledges that sometimes the Buddha has said that things possess final existence, sometimes he has said things do not possess final existence, and so on. And in fact, in the 70 stanzas on emptiness, Nagarjuna explicitly states that when it comes to understanding the Buddha's way, and this is a matter that is difficult to fully penetrate. So the point he is making is the need to understand and discriminate between what teachings of the Buddha can be taken at their literal face value, or what teachings of the Buddha needs to be interpreted further. In other words, the need to differentiate between those that are interpretable and those that are definitive. So, for example, there are sutras by the Buddha, teachings by the Buddha, where he says that the five aggregates, the skandhas, are the burden, and the one who is carrying that burden is the carrier. So in this passage statement, Buddha explains as if, over and above the five aggregates, there is a carrier, that is a person. So almost as if he's suggesting a reality of a self that is somehow independent of the five aggregates. Similarly, there are other sutras where Buddha states that person does not exist, karma exists, and then the aggregates exist. So he makes these distinctions. And similarly, there are other sutras where he says that the external objects do not exist, but mind exists truly. And then, of course, you have sutras where the true existence is negated across the entire spectrum of phenomena, both internal and external. So, so for example, in the Heart Sutra, we read the following statement that even the five aggregates, even with respect to the five aggregates, one must view them as being devoid of inherent existence. So also in the Professional Wisdom Sutras, starting from the category of form, the first of the five aggregates, up to the end of the 37 aspect of the path to enlightenment, which is the last of the Four Noble Truths, or starting from form to omniscient mind of the Buddha, in the Professional Wisdom Sutra, all of these are presented as being devoid of intrinsic nature. They are primordially tranquil, calmed, and so on.
다 대화가 있는 다치심이 켜버지네. 내도 감아도 정도이고 말했으니. 다 진리송에 얘기했다. 다 남배다 지라마 배지 가라다 장면이 배지 말해. 다 너들의 나래 리베지랑 너들 배지 장이 시험을 치면서 선 거예요. 다 처수다야. 배자로 다시는 심을 배지 미요. 제제 다진에 세상보다 장이 직다 장인 되버지다 민두지 대신 니체. 다 장인 되면은 사실은 그런 너도 공지 좀 전에 니기가 나라 애니 콜로를 못 숨chen. 는 콜 담았던 게 되지. 시험 콜 다 통마다 밥은 이후에 엔데레스. 가서야 장전수 소야지 용도가 좀 전에 랑게 깨나리야. 장이 치료 송도가. 그래서 단 지주체디 단 너랑이야 지고 주는 애니 마대 자정이지. 그래서 리인도잖아요. 다 리벌 때네. 독근시 뭐된게다 뭐된 소리 독근시기다 공든디 리베 잖아 리베 내가 매대지 도나 다지 다시 좀 켜놔 저거지. 리베 누구도나 다시 좀 켜놔 나 먼저지. 사들이 이르잖아요. 너를 장에 쳐야 돼. 다 리베 버시로 된 사람도 매버.
So given the diversity of teachings that we find in the Buddha's teaching, statements that we find in the Buddha's teaching, historically, and they evolved among the Buddhist schools, different positions on whether or not, first of all, one can make such distinctions between definitive and non-definitive sutras. For example, the Vaibhashika school, on the whole, will reject that kind of differentiation and maintain the position that all the Buddha's statements are definitive. Within the Sautrantaka school, one branch of that school, those that follow primarily the pattern of reasoning, this is kind of guesswork again. I believe that they accept the principle of the need to differentiate between definitive and non-literal teachings in the Buddha's sutras. In any case, so there are two camps. One camps that do not make such differentiations and maintain all the Buddha's statements to be definitive. Another camp that accepts the need to differentiate between those sutras that are literal and definitive and those sutras that are not definitive. And even in the Buddha's own teachings, for example, in the Samdhinirmochana Sutra, Sutra unraveling the intent of the Buddha, there is a hermeneutics which explains the interpretation of the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma, where the first and the second are identified as being non-definitive, and then the third turning of the wheel of Dharma as being definitive. So the problem is, although the Buddha states that in his own sutra, but when it comes to making the determination which sutra is definitive and which sutra is not definitive, we cannot rely entirely on scripture. Because if we rely on scripture, then the whole kind of process, a project of making the differentiations become untenable. So the only way in which we can do this is by means of reasoning and analysis. So in short, any statements of a sutra that in the process of subjecting it to critical analysis, if it reveals to be not contradictory to reason, and then which can be supported by reason, that would be accepted as definitive. And those sutras which, when subjected to critical analysis, the statements prove to be untenable and contradictory to reason, then these will be accepted as non-definitive. So it is only by means of applying reasoning and critical analysis that one can really differentiate between what is definitive and what is non-definitive in the Buddha's teachings.
Yeah. Yes, that's all. Now break.